Ever wondered how one unexpected conversation can change everything? It all started one ordinary evening when I was doing nothing out of the ordinary, until my neighbor, a man I hardly knew, stepped into my bedroom. What he told me that night was a shock, something I didn't see coming. A confession that made me rethink everything I thought I knew about him, and about myself. But before we dive into this surprising journey, tell me where you're tuning in from. Are you watching from New York, California, or somewhere in between? I'd love to know. And if you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter. Now, let's get started. I was standing in my bedroom, folding laundry, when I heard the familiar knock on the door. It was a sound I had come to associate with the mundane, quick, polite, and usually something to do with the neighborhood or small requests. But this knock felt different somehow. The kind of knock that makes you pause, just a second longer than usual, as if the person on the other side knows something you don't. I opened the door to find Mark standing there, my neighbor. I had seen him around for years, but we never really talked. A nod in passing here, a brief hello there, but that was about it. He was a bit of a mystery, quiet, reserved, and someone who didn't seem to need much company. I never thought much about him beyond the surface. A simple, polite man. "Hi, can I talk to you for a moment?" His voice was softer than I expected, almost hesitant. It felt unusual coming from him. I invited him in, not knowing why, but the curiosity was already tugging at me. I led him to the small armchair by the window, and he sat down, his posture slightly rigid. He looked uncomfortable, like he had been rehearsing what to say, but still wasn't sure how to say it. "Is everything okay, Mark?" I asked, trying to make the situation less awkward. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I noticed how tired they looked. Like there was something weighing on him, something he couldn't carry alone anymore. He took a deep breath before speaking. I don't know how to begin. I guess I'm just trying to figure out what to do with all of this." I tilted my head, waiting for him to continue, but he was struggling with his words. I could see the conflict in his expression. He seemed so out of place in my bedroom. This wasn't like him at all. "Do you remember when I helped you with the yard work last spring?" he asked. Of course I remembered. He had come over to help me with a heavy project I couldn't manage alone. It had been a simple favor, something neighbors do for each other, but now, sitting here in my room with him, it felt like the most insignificant moment in our history together. Little did I know that moment would lead to this conversation. "Yeah, I remember," I replied. "Why?" He hesitated for a moment, then finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "That was the first time I realized I couldn't stop thinking about you. And it wasn't just because you were there, or because I wanted to help. There was something more, something that I couldn't explain." My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't at all what I had expected. I had never seen Mark in this light. I'd never even considered that he might see me in a different way. I stood frozen, unsure of how to react. Was he saying what I thought he was saying? Why now, of all times, was he telling me this? "I know this sounds crazy," he continued, "but I had to tell you. I've kept it in for so long, and I can't keep pretending it doesn't matter." He looked at me, his expression earnest, and for a moment I saw a side of him that was vulnerable, even desperate. The air between us was thick with something unspoken. I opened my mouth to say something, but no words came. Instead, I just stood there, waiting, trying to process everything he had just said. I could feel the room closing in around me. My heart pounded in my chest, not out of fear, but out of the sheer weight of his words. Mark's confession hung in the air like a thick fog, and I couldn't figure out what to do with it. He wasn't looking at me now. His gaze had dropped to the floor, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. There was an unease about him, as if he just shared something so personal that he instantly regretted it. I wondered how long he had carried this secret, how many times he had wrestled with the urge to speak it aloud. "You don't have to say anything," he added quickly, almost apologetically. "I just needed to say it. I just needed you to know." I swallowed hard, trying to find the right words, but nothing felt quite right. I wasn't angry, wasn't confused, but I wasn't entirely comfortable either. I mean, this was Mark, the guy next door. The quiet one who'd waved from across the yard, offered a hand with the occasional project, but never had this kind of conversation with me before. "Mark," I began, the word almost a breath, unsure of where to go next. "I don't know what to say. This is unexpected." He nodded, his face flushing with a mix of relief and embarrassment. I didn't want to make things awkward between us. I couldn't carry this anymore. I sat down on the edge of the bed, trying to calm my racing thoughts. My mind kept spinning through 100 scenarios, trying to make sense of what he had just shared. Was this something deeper? Something more than just a neighborly gesture? Or was he simply lonely? I couldn't tell, but what I did know was that Mark wasn't the type to just blurt out something like this on a whim. "I never thought about you like that," I said slowly, carefully. "I mean, we've always just been neighbors. Friends, I guess, in passing." He glanced up at me, his eyes searching mine. "I know," he said quietly. "I wasn't expecting you to either. But there's something about you, the way you are. You're kind, but not in a forced way. You don't pretend to be something you're not. I admire that. I think I've admired it for a long time now." His words struck me in a way I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't the typical flattery I'd gotten in the past. There was something genuine behind it, something raw. And the strangest part, I could feel myself softening, not from a romantic place, but from one of empathy. He wasn't trying to manipulate or charm me. He was being honest, vulnerable. "I'm not sure what to do with all of this," I admitted, feeling the heat of the moment. "I didn't expect it. But thank you for telling me. I can't promise anything, but I'd appreciate your honesty." Mark's shoulders relaxed just a little. "That's all I wanted, to not keep it inside anymore. I won't bother you again with it, I swear." I shook my head, a gentle smile playing at the corners of my mouth. "You're not bothering me, Mark. I'm just surprised, that's all." He looked at me then, his eyes slightly brighter, almost hopeful. "I didn't want to make things weird between us, but I felt like if I didn't say it, I'd regret it forever." I glanced out the window, my thoughts still in turmoil. It was strange, having someone say something so heartfelt when I didn't even know they felt that way. But beyond the unexpected nature of it, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of pride for Mark. He had taken a risk. He had stepped outside his comfort zone, and in a way, that kind of bravery made me look at him in a new light. "I'm glad you told me," I said finally, finding a sense of clarity. "But I think we both need some time to figure out where to go from here." He nodded, standing up slowly. "Yeah, I agree. Thanks for listening. I really didn't know who else I could talk to about this." I walked him to the door, my mind still whirling with everything that had been said. As he stepped out into the hallway, he turned back toward me. "I'm still here," he said, his voice more steady now, as if the weight had been lifted just a little. "Whenever you want to talk, no pressure." "I'll keep that in mind," I replied softly, watching as he disappeared down the stairs. I closed the door behind me, leaning against it for a moment. It was a lot to process, more than I had anticipated. But one thing was clear. Our relationship, whatever it had been, had shifted. And I didn't know where it would lead, but I did know one thing. Something had changed in both of us that night. Something that couldn't be undone. The next few days felt strangely normal and yet not. I'd see Mark in passing out in the yard, getting his mail, or occasionally crossing paths on our walks to the car. He'd give me the same polite nod, and I'd return it, but there was an invisible shift between us now. I couldn't deny it. There was a quiet understanding, an unspoken weight that lingered. I could feel it in the air, like a subtle tension that wasn't necessarily uncomfortable, but something that made the ordinary moments feel a little heavier. I hadn't really thought about what to do with the conversation we'd had in my bedroom. Part of me wanted to act like it hadn't happened, to go back to the way things were before Mark had shared that vulnerable truth, but I knew deep down that wasn't possible. I wasn't sure where to place it, or if I even wanted to. It wasn't that I was offended by what he said. It wasn't that at all. I didn't feel uncomfortable in the way I thought I might. If anything, I admired his honesty. Most people, especially someone like Mark, would have kept that kind of thing to themselves. But he hadn't, and I found myself thinking about it more than I cared to admit. One afternoon, a few days later, I found myself outside watering the plants, just going through the motions. It was a quiet day, the kind where everything feels slow and almost meditative. The sun was starting to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the neighborhood. I could hear the faint hum of a lawnmower in the distance, the occasional chirp of a bird. Everything felt peaceful. Then I heard his voice. Mark was standing by the fence, his gaze fixed on the ground. He looked uncertain, like he was standing on the edge of something, trying to decide if he should take the leap. "Hey," he said softly, not quite meeting my eyes. "Hey," I replied, setting down the hose and wiping my hands on my jeans. "What's up?" Mark took a deep breath and then stepped closer, still hesitant. "I didn't want to just leave things like that, you know. I mean, with everything I told you. I don't want you to feel like you have to avoid me or anything." I gave him a small, reassuring smile, trying to ease some of the tension I could see in his posture. "Mark, you don't have to worry. We're neighbors. We're friends too, right? I'm not going to avoid you." He nodded slowly, but still seemed uncertain. I could sense that he needed something more, some kind of reassurance that we could move forward without things becoming awkward. I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he added, his voice low. "I know I threw a lot at you the other night." "It's okay," I said gently. "Really, I appreciate you being honest. I think I needed a little time to let everything sink in, but I don't want you to feel like you can't talk to me. That's not what this is about." Mark looked up at me then, his expression softening just a little. You're okay with it?" "I'm okay with it," I answered, my voice steady. "I think I needed time to process it all, but I don't want you to feel like you can't be yourself around me. It's just going to take a little time to figure out what happens next." He smiled faintly, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I can handle that. I just wanted you to know that I'm not expecting anything from you. I don't want to rush anything. I just wanted you to know where I was coming from." I nodded, relieved by his words. "I'm glad you're not expecting anything from me. And I'm glad we're still talking. I was a little worried about how this would change things between us." Mark took a step back and placed his hands in his pockets. "Well, I'm not going anywhere," he said, his voice tinged with a wry smile. "I'm just next door. So if you ever want to talk, you know where to find me." The air felt a little lighter between us, the tension easing. It was strange, but in that moment, I realized that something had shifted in me too. I wasn't sure what it meant, but I could feel the foundation of something new forming, something built on mutual respect and understanding, even if we didn't fully understand it yet. "I'll keep that in mind," I said, watching him turn to walk back toward his house. As I watched him go, I realized that I didn't know what the future held for either of us. I didn't know if this was the beginning of something deeper, or if it would fizzle out as quietly as it had started. But there was one thing I was sure of. Something had changed, and maybe that was enough for now. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet shift in our relationship became a part of the rhythm of my daily life. Mark and I continued to interact, but it was always in that same understated, polite way. Our interactions felt lighter, but there was an underlying understanding that neither of us had fully addressed. It wasn't awkward exactly, but it was different. Every time I saw him, I couldn't shake the feeling that something unsaid lingered between us. Yet, despite the subtle tension, there was also something comforting about it, a sort of unspoken respect for each other's space, while acknowledging that we both carried the weight of that moment. And then one evening, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I heard a knock at the door again. This time I wasn't caught off guard, though my heart still skipped a beat. I opened the door to find Mark standing there, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in a while. His usual nervous energy was gone, replaced by a quiet calmness that seemed to reflect the time that had passed since that night in my bedroom. "Hey, mind if I come in for a minute?" he asked, his voice warm, but still cautious. "Of course," I replied, stepping aside to let him in. "What's on your mind?" Mark walked in, his hands in his pockets, his expression open but thoughtful. He glanced around the room, his eyes landing on the chair by the window. It felt almost like a casual visit, nothing heavy. Yet I knew that Mark didn't come over without a reason. "I've been thinking," he began, taking a seat, and I realized something. I sat down across from him, waiting for him to continue. My mind raced a little, but I didn't want to interrupt him. "You're one of the few people I can actually talk to. I don't really have anyone else around here, you know." His voice was steady, but there was something vulnerable in it that I hadn't expected. I nodded. "I understand. We're neighbors. We've both been here a while. I think we've built a kind of unspoken friendship without realizing it." He smiled faintly at that, but there was something deeper behind his eyes, something that made my heart ache for him. I'd never truly considered what it must be like for him, living so quietly, with so few connections. He wasn't the type to go out and make friends easily. He had always kept to himself, and I could see now how that had shaped him. "I don't want to make things weird, you know," he continued, looking directly at me. "But I also don't want to keep pretending that I don't feel the way I do." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his words. There it was again, the confession, raw and real. But this time, it wasn't a sudden revelation. It was a continuation of that quiet honesty we had shared weeks ago. "I don't think anything's